Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen Roca. I work for WIEGO in Lima. This is one of the cities in which WIEGO focused its study. WIEGO is a global network that tries to improve the situation of workers in the informal employment. Thank you for joining us today. We are here to share the results of a study that we have carried out during the pandemic, during the confinement in 2020, with informal workers in 12 cities all over the world. We want to share the results of Lima in particular. Uh, are there any technical announcements that you want to make right now? No? Okay. So let's begin. I will share my screen and I will share the results. But before that, I want to welcome to everyone present in the panel. I am Carmen Roca, and there are two representatives from organizations of workers in the informal economy, Ninón Castillo. She is from the district of Comas in the north of Lima, and for 20 years she has been a member of the National Network of Informal Workers, Renata. She is based in Comas. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. And also Rogger Canales, or Rogger. He works in Olivos district in the north of Lima, and he's part of the National Federation of Waste Speakers. And in Olivos, he's part of the Vida Verde organization. We also have here today Katia, Samanamud. She promotes self-employment and employment. Thank you for being here today, for having time today in such a difficult moment. We will now share the presentation. I will leave my camera open so I can continue telling you about this study. I wanted to tell you a little bit about WIEGO as organization. We never have a lot of visibility. Our name is very hard to distinguish us. WIEGO is the acronym in English. It's a global network in charge of the researching and improving the situation of those in informal employment in a situation of urban poverty. Improves the existing statistics about this population, improving what is known and the alternatives for public policies, for the design and urban planning, and for other aspects that have to do mainly with the livelihoods of that population that makes up most of the employment all over the world. 60% of the workforce in our planet is part of the informal employment. We have been working since before 2000 with small events since 2010, 11 years ago, and we have a sustained presence in Peru. In the last years, it has focused in Lima. We work in metropolitan Lima with different sectors, street vendors, market vendors, newspaper vendors that are called canijitas in Peru, waste speakers of solid waste, domestic workers, also workers that carry goods from the trucks to the markets, and workers that at home produce goods for someone that hires them, which is called home-based work, as we call it in Peru, or that they produce to sell those products themselves. The study that we're going to present today was carried out in 12 cities. And as you can see in this map, in America, we have 3 cities, Lima, Mexico City, and New York. Why New York? Because there's a vulnerable population in regarding street vendors and solid waste pickers in different cities in Africa, Dakar, in Senegal, on the western coast, Dakar, Durban, in South Africa, and Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. In Europe, there's one city, Pleven, which has an important population of home-based workers. In South Asia, we have different cities. In India, there are three: Ahmedabad, Delhi, and Tirupur. And finally, Bangkok in Thailand. In Peru, we focus in four sectors due to several reasons. Street vendors, because most informal workers are part of these sectors in Peru, excluding the agricultural workers. We have 400,000 street workers according to the National Household Survey. The following sector regarding the quantity, the number of workers are domestic workers. We estimate 185,000 workers are domestic workers. Then newspaper vendors is an important sector. They were allowed to work during the confinement. And finally, waste pickers, due to the vulnerability of the sector and due to the importance of the task they carry out for the environment, as they work closely and jointly with the municipalities. How did we carry out the study? February before the confinement, April during the confinement, and then June and July. In June, we only analyzed the first week. We finalized some surveys. So we analyzed before the confinement, during the confinement, and after the confinement. This is a study that took into account the same questions for the same persons. This year, we will make the same survey. And what did we want to know? We wanted to know about daily average income before, during, and after the confinement, the number of days they worked, how their work changed cells as well. The responsibilities at home also changed because they had to take care of children, elderly. So how many persons receive cash subsidize or food baskets from the municipalities. We also wanted to know if there was an increase in the in hunger during the confinement and how this population was able to move forward, as this is a population that survives with the income they generate on a daily basis. As this this service was carried out on the telephone, they have different options to select, but we have 4 open questions and we were able to gather very important information that provided qualitative data. In this study, you can see the number of persons that were surveyed, and as a reference, you can see the figures of informal employment in Lima before COVID crisis. It was 57%. So most workers are part of the informal sectors. I will now share with you the key findings. In April, as you know, most persons were not able to work. We were all adjusting to those weeks after the beginning of the pandemic. Only 58% of the newspaper vendors worked as they were afraid of getting infected, and they are an older population. In June and July, there are a few of them who went back to work. Most of them had zero income, and this situation is the hardest if we compare that with the other 11 cities in the study. Peru had a social confinement that was a lot stricter in comparison with the other cities, which affected the income and the vulnerability in general of this population. What we have found in this study is that the most urgent claim is to keep on working, and this is more important than receiving subsidies from the state. In most cases, we have heard comments such as, thank you for your question, but actually the subsidies can help us for a couple of days. Maybe they were useful and we could use it for a couple of days, but actually what we need is to keep on working under the conditions, under the appropriate conditions, so that we do not get infected and we do not infect those persons we are in touch with. Here we can see the percentage of workers that received subsidies, cash bonuses. Half of the 216 persons received subsidies and 21% received food baskets. In green, you can see this sector that received most subsidized. Those are the waste pickers. That's good news because that's the population that was most affected. Regarding hunger, food safety for this population, the figures are quite alarming and higher than in the other 11 cities that are part of the study. Although we don't have a figure of food, of hunger in February, we can compare it with the other cities, and it's higher, 63% informed hunger among the adults and 61% among children. Regarding income, on the left column, you can see the amount of the average income per day, 46 soles for street vendors, domestic workers 52, newspaper workers 36, the lowest since February, and waste pickers 42. In June and July, not many of them were working again, but we can see that those that went back to work, their income are half of what they used to earn in February, between 40 and 50% of what they used to earn before. Here you can see the drop in the income. The highest points are the average income per day per sector. The blue is the lowest for the newspaper vendors, and the highest is for domestic workers, 52. And we can see a decrease, zero income, slow increase for those who went back to work after the confinement. So what did they do to move forward in such a difficult time? Most of them, 94%, took one or more of these measures. 73% used all their savings, 56% requested support from relatives, friends, neighbors, and 38% requested a loan. Now, let's see the results per sectors. The findings can promote programs, policies, and now we are facing a new confinement, and the economic recovery in the sector is key, not only because they have to face obstacles, similar obstacles, but this sector is already in a very difficult economic situation. In the case of street vendors, they had no capital, as they had to use what they had to keep on feeding their families and keep on paying bills. And also they had to keep on paying schools. we have seen the results confined we have seen that the products were forfeited, for example. And what do they need? They need access to credits, but small amounts and with interest rates that are accessible for them. 200 soles is not something that our financial system wants to lend right now. For the financial institution to lend less than 1,000 soles is not attractive, because they need specific measures for this sector. 150 soles can aid a street vendor to buy products and recover slowly. We also have these paraditas, which are street market vendors. It's a kind of market in the open. These are places that have adapted to the measures imposed by the municipalities, and in the distribution of foods, this is key to provide the population with the lowest income with the food that they need. We will not find this everywhere, but on the north part and east part of Lima. Given the role they have to provide food safety to the outskirts of Lima, they need support to keep on working to reduce the agglomeration of public in other places, and they will prevent people from using public transportation to buy food. So allowing the work of that sector is beneficial. Also, these street vendors have to comply with an ordinance in Lima that regulates this activity and the process of formalization. I will now tell you about the domestic workers. Domestic workers are formal workers that have an employer, but most of them have not been registered as an associated domestic workers, and they are not being protected by contributions to their social security or health security, and they are not. They are also considered part of the informal sector.
70% of them said that the employer asked them not to go to work or fired them, but they did not receive any type of compensation or previous notification. What we see is that most of them agreed that they were demanded to stay home during lockdown in order to avoid contagion, and if they were not able to stay home, they would lose their job. What are they requesting? As all the industries, they want to continue working. They need a work permit in order not to be managing fake permits to take care of the elderly that are not specific to their job. They do have a health protocol, and they request also support so as to force or to have the legal benefits for those that are fired. I would like to talk about the results regarding the sector of newspapers, hawkers or vendors. I don't know, we call them canillitas. These workers in the 50s and 60s were young boys of 12 or 13, and they use shorts closer to the calves. So, and they didn't have the money to buy trousers, and that's why they use shorts. And that's why they use these short trousers, and that's why they have that name. They are those that are the elder. They have a lower income before the COVID, and they suffer a lot of anxiety because they feel that they won't be able to work because of their age. And as we all understand, we know that the sales of newspapers have dropped because of internet, and the drop was drastic after the pandemic. So they see that they need to supplement their sales of newspapers with sales of sweets and sodas and all the things that we find in different stores. So sometimes municipalities sometimes do not allow them to sell those products. So that's why we need for them to have the permits to sell those products. So also require PPE because they work every day and they have been working during lockdown, and they also lost working capital. The sales of newspaper vendors, for example, when they say they have to pay for those products when they return to work, but they need to recover their working capital. Also, they need to change of industry, but they need some support in order to be able to change the industry because they are seeing a reduction in the sales of newspapers. And they also need the permits to work with other products. When we talk about West speakers, we know that this is the sector that has been most affected in terms of income. During lockdown, they weren't able to work at all. The protocols prepared by the Environment Ministry took a lot. And they made that each of the associations to buy thermometers and detergent, apart from the PPE that they use every day. This is a sector that uses strategy to be able to survive the pandemic. They sold assets. For example, they sold their motorbikes, their home appliances, everything to be able to survive the pandemic. And in order to recover those assets, they will have to work a lot. And they receive more support from the government in terms of money subsidies and food baskets. What are they requesting? During lockdown, the Environment Ministry has approved their job. They can continue to work, but police officers, for example, do not know about that. So they need the support so that they are able to work. They cover the cost of their recycling program. Probably Rogger will tell more about this, and they need more support because they are providing a public service without cost, and they also need access to credits because they need to stop working on food and they need to start to work with motorbikes or with trucks, and they need the credits for that in order to be able to buy a used motorbike or a truck, or at least the association should be able to buy one of those vehicles. And also they should be able to have collection sites or warehouses. And because we know this is a risk for them and there is also a fire risk involved. So those are the results of the survey. We will share with all of you this presentation and the study in itself. And now I would like to give the floor to Ninón Castillo. She is the representative of the National Networks of Self-Employed Workers, Renata. She is a street vendor, and she will be able to tell us firsthand what's happening. Welcome, Ninón. Welcome, everybody. My name is Ninón Castillo Córdoba. I'm a member of Renata. I'm also a member of the Association of Vendors of Cochique Santa Rosa. We work together and we are trying to identify needs, and we have been able to save for 20 years, and we bought 6 houses with that money. Thank you to the savings of the association in order to build our market and to be out of the streets and to be part of the formal economy. On April the 10th, the municipality of Comas informed us that they will be spraying the market for 2 days and that we will be able to come back to the market. But they evicted us. They use army trucks for that. And they told us that because of the order of the central government, we were in lockdown and we could not work because of COVID-19. We stopped working then. And some of our colleagues had to hire places and houses, paying 10 or 15 soles every day because they had the need to work, no matter what. Those spaces were located around the market because we had to work every day and we couldn't wait. There were other vendors from other markets that lost their jobs and they start to work or to live in our market. And we, the vendors, were waiting for an answer or a response from the municipality that allowed us to work. We don't want to be living in circumstances in which you are working one day and the day after that you are evicted. Many colleagues got ill because they lost their capital and the savings they had for many years. Since there was no response from the municipality about whether we could work or not, and since more and more people were occupying our market, we decided to not be afraid of COVID and resume our work by risking our life. But we needed to work. Many people had a lot of debts that they took before the pandemic without knowing what was going to happen as of March the 16th, 2020. We, the vendors, did not receive any help, no baskets, no subsidies. They just wanted us to stay home without thinking about our needs. We, workers, live every day from our daily work. In this situation, and as leaders, workers, and after listening to the complaints of many, we decided to go back to work. Over many years, thinking about the future, we have been planning and we have a project to build a modern market. And for that, we have saved 1 soul every day for 21 years. We were all the time thinking that we wanted to leave the streets because we are aware that the street is not ours, but we need to be in the formal economy, but we need time and we need to have concrete answers. We want them to allow us to work. As an association, we have a construction project that has been approved, and we have 50% of the money to build the market. We had that money with a financial institution, but we didn't imagine what was going to happen with the pandemic. After that 50% of approval for the construction, after the pandemic, that money was no longer there, and we did not have the resources, and we cannot continue working if we do not have the space. So if we have planned to build our market, we need to have a space to be able to continue to work, and also to work in the future with all our strengths in order to be able to continue with the completion of this project, that is the construction of our market. Our colleagues are well aware, and sometimes some of them are older and they do not want to continue working in that project. So that's why we want the municipalities of our districts to sit to talk to us, and that they are able to give us an answer, a response, because they just cannot use evictions. We're human beings and we all need to work, because without work, we won't be able to survive. Many people have preferred to work in spite of COVID and the fear of COVID. Thank you. Thank you, Ninón. Ninón will be available later for answering some questions, but now I would like to give the floor to Rogger Canales. Welcome, Rogger. He is a member of the National Federation of Waste Pickers, and also his base organizations is Vida, Verde in Los Olivos. Welcome. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Hello, all the press members. I'm Rogger Canales. I'm a formal waste picker. I have other colleagues that belong to the formal economy as well. Before the pandemic, we were working in a segregation program that is called El Puente. And we have a law that is about recycling, and we are participating in that program in the framework of that law. The program includes collecting waste or domestic waste, or the waste that domestic households give us. I have here the list of neighbors that participate in the program. We give our neighbors 2 bags. The green one is for recycling materials and the other is for waste. That is why we talk about source recycling. But this bag that you see here is a cost that we cover. All the waste pickers that participate in the program pay the cost of these bags. We also need to provide incentives to neighbors so that they continue to participate in this program, of this recycling program. And this is an incentive. We provide them with detergent. And another incentive is plants. But this is also a cost that we cover. Virtually, the municipality does not provide any incentives for the neighbors. Only a few times they have supported us. So we have all these fixed costs plus my vehicle. I have to maintain it also. I have also the uniform and my clothes. I need to change them, and I need to have 3 or 4 of this to work every week. And then I have here my report. my monthly report. So I need almost 500 soles every month. That is the receipt that I receive in the collection site. This receipt is something that we receive every month. And every month we pay a tax of 20 soles to the city. So apart from delivering all these and providing these incentives and so on, we have to pay taxes. That recycling material also went through a whole chain of taxes. The neighbors donated, but we have to pay taxes for that. So tell me, how much money do you think that I will have after all those costs to feed my family? But in spite of all that, we continue to work. We continue to work. During the pandemic and the lockdown, as of March the 15th, 2020, we did not have money. We work every day in order to earn some money. The collection goes from 8 to 3, and then we have the selection process of the waste. And then we have a warehouse that is open until 6 p.m. and we receive some money in exchange. And that money is for our everyday life. Sometimes 30, 40 soles. We do not earn the same money every day, but this is what we receive. We are workers that earn their money every day. After the lockdown, we were not able to work. There was a very strict lockdown. We weren't able to leave our houses or our homes. I was lucky enough that my wife received a subsidy of 350 soles, but the former president, Martin Vizcarra, said they made the statistics that a food basket every day would be 25 soles, so that subsidy of 350 will cover 15 days. But imagine our situation, because we only received that subsidy of 350 soles in a period that lasted until August the 31st. With all those 350 soles, we have to survive, to buy food. We weren't able to buy meat, for example. There were some days that we were able to eat soup, and we needed to have a single meal for the whole day. And we cook with logs and the price was cheaper, but we have to save money. You cannot live with 350 soles during the whole lockdown.
We had to ask for loans, sell our products, our working material, because we couldn't stand the situation any longer. Taking this into account, the neighbors helped us with food, but sometimes we know that we cannot receive from our neighbors forever. So during the confinement, we had to go out and work. Many colleagues had to go out and work to be exposed to the pandemic. their colleagues who have died. And we have to say it because they have died and we are formal way speakers and they have not received anything, any subsidies. I am a formalized way speaker. You can see my ID here. I have a diploma. I am a formalized way speaker. It's just a paper. And that's it. But in practice, we are still informal workers. We don't have any benefits, any health benefits. Okay. We went through very difficult situations during the lockdown. The government established a health protocol in May 2020. But in order to implement it, well, that takes a very long time. They were asking for things that were very expensive. As formalized way speakers, we are not able to work like that, to follow the protocol in a facility where we can separate all the waste, clean every day. I'm sorry. Maybe at the end we can explain more about your situation, but as we are lacking the comment from the general director from the ministry. Okay, thank you. So we went through all those difficult situations. We were able to implement the protocol in August 2020. It was established in May, but we were able to implement it in August. And do you think we can live with 300 soles during that time? We suffered hunger, but we keep on working because we believe in our work and we will keep on moving forward for our families and also to protect the environment. We know that the climate change is affecting us a lot. That's why we work on waste separation. Thank you. Thank you, Roger. I will now give the floor to Katia Samanamud. She's the General Director of Employment and Self-Employment Promotion in the Ministry of Work. We have had many meetings with her. She is interested in the improvement of the sector. So Katia, go ahead. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you for your invitation and for your presentation. And thank you to Roger for the information and to Ninón. I think that these kind of meetings are very important to be informed the public sector and the media about the situation, a situation that is not as visible. So I want to thank your effort. As you have mentioned, we have had different meetings last year in order to talk, know firsthand the situation of self-employed workers in the different sectors. So I think this is really important. And for the design of public policies, I think this event is very useful. The study is very useful to have the context about what has happened for self-employed workers in Lima, where most economically active population is located. What has happened during the pandemic has been chaotic during the quarter. During the first quarter, the work of self-employed workers was really affected. It was more affected than formal workers, but they have recovered quite fast. I think this is good news today. In Lima, if we compare it with last year, loss of uh, independent workers is 6%, while the other sectors are lagging behind. In the case of domestic workers, they were the most affected group at the national level and in Lima as well, and they have not been able to recover, unfortunately. With the recovery of the employment we are undergoing right now, I don't want to say that the problem has been solved, because apart from having unemployment, the working conditions are also important. And as we know, conditions are not the most appropriate we would like to have as a country. So there's a lot of work to do. The COVID has been very hard for the work market, but also for the state. This is a situation for which we were not prepared for, and the capacity of the state to design policies has been affected by the pandemic. I want to highlight that the confinement this year is different from last year. It's not as strict, as we know that a country with high levels of informal workers or informal employment has to keep on working. So we are incorporating these findings in the measures implemented by the government, so that independent workers can keep on working. Information is also key. We want people to carry out activities with safety. So we have to provide information how to work in a safe environment, preventing infections. This is something we have to keep on working on. And I think that this study makes me think that we still have a long way to go regarding the information the state has about the citizens. Regarding the subsidies, this has been a weak point. The state doesn't have much information about the citizens, about how households are made up, and some persons who needed the bonus did not receive it. And this happened because we didn't have information about who needed the subsidies. In particular, for the informal population, there's a lack of information. This year, our plan is to strengthen the information regarding the working market, the labor market, and also to know the situation of the workers, also women workers groups that have been particularly affected, and we need to understand what has happened. So we'll be publishing these studies as well. And I also want to highlight that we are working on a national policy for decent employment. We have been working on this project for several months, and we are about to conclude it at the end of March. We want to approve it, and as any policy, it is focused on structural problems. The lack of decent employment is a problem. That calls our attention right now. But what we want with this policy is for 1 out of 4 Peruvians to have a decent employment. This doesn't look like much, but take into account the current situation, this goal is quite ambitious. So this involves local, regional governments, different sectors. The local government is very important and has to be involved. and it is aimed at reducing the levels of informality. Want to provide specific services for the self-employed sectors, for example, training to have better jobs, but also to improve the conditions that allow those workers to enjoy better living conditions. For example, pensions. What do we do when there's an emergency situation uh, and people lose their jobs? We do not have to wait for a bonus to be given, but we need to have mechanisms that allows us to resort to emergency mechanisms to solve these kind of situations. So once again, I want to thank you for this event, and I'm really inspired by the motivation of Ninón and Roger, the groups they represent, that in spite of difficulties, they keep on working, and congratulations to you. Thank you, Katia. Now we will keep on working, and the coordination with the municipal government is very important. Sometimes this is something that affects everyone, and it's very hard to implement projects that sometimes take 21 years. It's impossible to carry out these projects. We need to implement them right away to benefit all sectors. So thank you for being with us today. If the representatives of the press have any questions, you can ask them. You can open your microphone. You have to say your name and who you want to ask the question to. So go ahead. You can also write them on the chat box. I want to welcome Chris Hackman. He's with us from New York. He has working with us in this study. He works for Sure We Can. This is an organization of rice speakers in the city of New York. The forum is open if you want to write a question on the chat box, or you can open your microphone and ask the question. Hello, good morning. I'm Luis Vidal from Radio Nacional. This question is to Katia Samanamud. This study is based on 2020. And in this period of time, you as a public official, do you consider that these confinements that, as you mentioned, are not as strict as last year's, but do you consider that they affect the labor sector in our country? Thank you, Luis, for your question. Yes, there is an effect because there's a group, there are some economic activities that are not allowed, but we estimate, we still do not have statistical data about how the economy is progressing, but we believe the impact will be lower last year's. We believe that the confinement will not last as long as last year's, and we are analyzing how the health situation is progressing. So estimates are more optimistic than last year's. Luis, I wanted to add something. For the kind of work we are discussing, the role of the municipality is very important. There are some municipalities that allow street vendors to work, as the images that we have seen with the face masks and everything, but others just uh, use PPE and social distance, and they may be evicted or persecuted, as we have seen in the press. So the purpose of the study is to see the effect the confinement on this population. This kind of population is the most affected one when there is a crisis. This is the third study carried out by WIEGO in different crises all over the world. And this is a topic that uh, we see every time. There's no way of surviving this situation. If you have any other questions or comments from the press, I have a question here from Fernando Cuadros from newspaper La República for Katia. He says that it was mentioned that certain workers, street vendors could access credit that was below 200 soles, but the banks turned their back on them and they have to resort to informal credits that affect them more due to interest rates. So the question is, what is the ministry doing in connection with this issue in order to address it? Thank you for your question. The problem of accessing financial assistance for independent workers is something we have identified a long time ago in the context of the pandemic. As we know, the government has provided some credits, some funds that were aimed especially at certain companies. But here we are talking about low or smaller loans. The ministry was able to design a fund to provide small credits that take into account the needs of the workers due to the political context. This has not been implemented. We are having conversations with the men to authorize the resources, but this is something we are still discussing. Produce does have some financial instruments to expand the financial instruments for independent workers in spite of the difficulties, but there's a system that is really well designed, but we are still facing some challenges to reduce the risk for a small bank to provide more information so that these small banks can assess the risk and are able to lend money in another conditions. We are still working on this. We are trying to coordinate efforts and we hope to be able to implement it soon.
Yes, we expect that it happens soon. We have had several conversations on this. We understand that the political situation is a barrier, but we are here for provide you with any information that you need. Even the organizations can also provide information regarding the different programs. There is another question for you, Katia. There has been changes in some specific rules of labor law, so that informal employment disappears. Are new specific rules in labor law that will help to avoid the situation that we have informal employment? I don't know if I can understand the question well. Regarding labor regulations, as of last year, there has been great emphasis in order to strengthen the inspection work. As you know, there is a group of workers that work in formal companies or in companies, but that are not formal jobs. So that is the focus of the inspection agency or the oversight agency, so that these workers are formalized, because that will lead to that will give them access to a group of or a set of rights that they do not have right now. So we improve the regulations of the oversight agency on one side, and also there are also informal workers that are part of the informal economy, and there is more flexibility now so that they can develop their activities in the current context with this new lockdown. And also we have measures to mitigate the drop in earnings, and we are preparing a new subsidy for that. Thank you. There is also a question about, my name is Johanny Llanos from Diario Popular. The legal flow of foreign persons affects the labor market. Ninón Castillo, would you like to talk about this? The inflow of foreigners has affected our colleagues because there is an unfair competition. If a product costs 5 soles, foreigners sell it half the price. I would like to talk about a specific example. There were some colleagues of us that sold chicken, but then Venezuelans came and sold them cheaper. And this has affected our income because of the competition. We all need to work, but we need to work in harmony, let's say, because of their situation and because they are not considering their costs, they enter in unfair competition. We also have the problem because under threats, they stop our colleagues from working. They stay in the work sites and we cannot take them out. That's why we need the support of the municipalities, because we have a register or a record of the colleagues that work in each site. But the Venezuelans sometimes occupy those sites and they will end up leading and managing those sites. And that is not fair. We complied. We are trying to comply with all the protocols, and that is a cost. And we are trying, for the sake of our customers and for our own sake, we have to take care of ourselves. So we wear masks, we use hand sanitizer. We are trying to emulate the situation and the conditions of a formal or legal market, but they do not follow those protocols. And they say that they don't have the money to follow those protocols. And they say just, I do not have the money. And that's the problem that we have. And that's why we have unfair competition. This happens with Venezuelans and with other immigrants. So during the pandemic, we were told that we could not work. So we decided to change our industries. Instead of selling clothes, I sold carrots or vegetables in order not to lose my place of work. That's because Venezuelans or other immigrants occupied a site and they say that that site is theirs and we cannot work there. And the municipality is not helping us. Thank you, Ninón. Katia, there is another question for you. There is unemployment caused by the pandemic, but informal employment is restricted, and there is no coordination with municipalities to find a strategy so that the population that works in the informal sector is able to work. What do you believe should be the solution? The distribution of food is not enough. We need to provide information regarding the protocols that exist and those that could be approved in the future. We need to guarantee the access to safety equipment. I think that's key. And I think that we need to strengthen that. The local governments have been responsible for providing those elements. And also the production ministry has been involved, and we need to strengthen. But the distribution or the provision of food is not the solution. I don't know if Jaime Ramirez has a question. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes, my name is Jaime Ramirez from Radio Comas. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation and for giving the importance or to put an emphasis on the impact that the pandemic has on this sector. We would like to know if the ministry has a study to be able to design the measures to minimize the impact of the pandemic. And the target group of the study that belongs to the informal economy also affects municipalities and local governments. Regarding the ones that carry out the study, WIEGO and 10 organizations, Renata, La Parada, and Confiar. They are 4 organizations that are made up of sales vendors. Also, we have Frenara and Fenaretu, federations of waste pickers, and also the National Federation of Newspapers Vendors. We shared information with them because they were able to provide us with information that shows the composition of their organizations. We don't know if there are more women than men, and that is because of their organization and their composition. We will share the results with all those who want to have them and share them. And we will have some interviews with media outlets. And we will use all the social media to spread all this information. Katia, would you like to talk? Yes, the ministry has several channels to provide information. We have programs, we have the services of the ministry, also the employment sites, and also social media. And also all the information is on the web. Also, I would like to ask a question between the comparison regarding the comparison between Lima and Ecuador and the city of Mexico. We see that in Lima, waste pickers were the sector that was most affected, and in Lima and in all the sectors, workers were able to work more days before the pandemic. So before the pandemic in Lima, these population groups work more than in the other cities. And also we see that another important point is that stigma, of saying that informal workers are channels of infection, that stigma was higher in Mexico and in Lima. Especially this affected those workers that carried out child care and elderly care. And we see that the impact of the disease on domestic workers is higher in Lima. So that is a comparison among the or between the three sectors. We all see a decrease in income, and also we see that the measures taken by the government are not enough regarding special programs or subsidies, etc. I don't know if there are any other questions. According to the experience of WIEGO, which strategies have worked in other countries and could be used in our countries? We don't have the strategy that works, but when the economy grows, informal employment drops. And we have seen this in our countries. When we have in our countries sustained economic growth, informal employment reduces 1 percentage point every year. But the challenge that we have in our country and in all countries is that the population of informal employment includes a lack of skills. So because they have a lower education level, there are more women that are head of households, and they have also issues regarding housing. And that's why we are working with a population that is older, and for example they did not have access to a pension system, and after they turned 65 they have to continue working in the informal sector. This is a general situation, and we need to create measures so that they are able to be part of the formal economy. And also we have started regarding teenage pregnancy, and what happens is that many women work as sales vendors because of the flexible schedule and timetable. And definitely economic growth and the inclusion of persons in the formal economy with access to credit and also with access to benefits work. And we can see this in our country as well. When there is a law for waste pickers with a clear process of work, it's a public service that is not paid as in Colombia or Brazil. When they work hand with the local governments, things improve. Sometimes they pay taxes, but they do not receive any benefit because it's an informal job. The same happens with domestic workers. They have a new law now. We have an ordinance for sales vendors in Lima, and the law demands to have a health insurance. So they are allowed to work in the street for 2 years. But during those years, you have to choose an industry. For example, you need to rent a shop, and they provide the vendor with a set of measures and steps that they should take. And this includes the municipality, and this involves also the neighbors and the sales vendors. And that creates a framework so that vendors leave the streets and move towards to a formal situation. Those are the things that we need. These sectors of informal employment need a work process in order to be able to be part of the formal economy. They need to work in detail, because a waste picker needs something that is very different from that a street vendor needs. For example, the waste picker needs to be able to collect a volume of waste in order to improve his or her situation. Each industry is different. The same happens with domestic workers. For example, they need to have a record and so on. So each sector needs to have a detailed knowledge of the measures for their sector. We need to work together with the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Production and local governments in order to have detailed information in order to improve local governance and to set goals that municipalities need to meet. And if the municipalities are able to meet those goals, they have access to a higher budget. We could do that with several sectors. So we need to, that is the incentive we have for the municipality. And also we have the expert role of the state. I don't know if there are any issues or questions. Sorry, Katia, that I'm talking about you all the time. There is a question from Marco. Good morning. According to the experiences that you have, could you differentiate what happened with those jobs that are related to entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship seems to be something nice, to have the spirit, and workers have that spirit, and they are very dignified workers. The ethics of work, or the work ethics of the informal worker, is different from the one that we have in our minds. It's not related to crimes and so on. That is what we have been able to collect in our study and in previous studies. They are willing to work no matter what. And they have to cover many costs in order to be able to work together with the municipalities. So there is a phrase that a person shared with us in the past, is that had to do with entrepreneurship and the poor. We need to focus on informal employment. That is, there we have the variable of poverty, that is the most important one. And entrepreneurship sometimes is related to higher income sectors. But the objective is the same. And the support to family members is one of the goals of these informal sector workers. They have this internal force. They do not want to receive things, they want to do things. So that would be all, because we don't want to take up all your time. Thank you, Katia, for being here. Also, I would like to thank you, Ninón and Rogger, for being here with us, and they will be here if you have any questions in the future. Thank you for all the colleagues who were here with us today, and we are here if you have any questions. Thank you and have a nice day.